Parrot exposes cruel nanny abusing baby, then reveals her chilling plan. Sarah Johnson stood at her kitchen window, absently stirring her morning coffee as she watched the autumn leaves dance across their sprawling backyard in suburban Connecticut. The prestigious law firm where she'd made partner just last year now seemed a world away. Her maternity leave had transformed her daily routine from courtroom drama to midnight feedings and lullabies. A change she welcomed with open arms, even if it meant temporarily stepping away from her thriving career. Behind her, a familiar voice broke through her reverie. "Good morning, sweetheart. Good morning, good morning." The cheerful greeting came from Jasper, their African gray parrot, who had been part of their family for nearly 8 years. His cage door was open, as it usually was during the day, allowing him to observe the household activities from his favorite perch atop his elaborate housing. "Good morning to you too, Jasper," Sarah smiled, turning to face the intelligent bird. His feathers were a beautiful mixture of gray hues, with striking red tail feathers that caught the morning light. They had rescued him from a local shelter where he'd been abandoned, and over the years, he'd become far more than just a pet. He was family. Her husband, Dr. James Johnson, a pediatric surgeon at Yale New Haven Hospital, appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his scrubs. "I heard our morning greeter is up and about," he grinned, walking over to give Sarah a kiss. "How's our little Emma doing?" As if on cue, the baby monitor on the counter came alive with soft cooing sounds. Their 6-month-old daughter was awake, right on schedule. Sarah set down her coffee cup and started toward the stairs, but James stopped her with a gentle hand on her arm. "I'll get her," he offered. "You finish your coffee. God knows you need it after being up with her twice last night." Sarah smiled gratefully, watching as her husband bounded up the stairs. She could hear him through the monitor, his voice tender as he greeted their daughter. "Good morning, princess. Did you have sweet dreams?" The decision to hire a nanny hadn't come easily. Sarah had initially planned to extend her maternity leave, but a high-profile case at the firm required her expertise. The matter involved a children's hospital facing a class action lawsuit, exactly the kind of case she'd built her reputation on. The timing couldn't have been worse, but the opportunity was too important to pass up. "Time for working mommy," Jasper squawked, one of the many phrases he'd picked up over the years. Sarah smiled at his eerily accurate timing. The bird had an uncanny ability to read the household's routines. James returned with Emma, who was wearing her favorite yellow onesie, her wispy blonde hair forming a perfect morning halo around her head. "Look who's ready to start the day," he announced, settling their daughter into her high chair. Sarah reached for the baby food while James grabbed his travel mug. "The agency called yesterday," she mentioned. "They're sending over someone new today. Her name is Lisa Bennett. Supposedly she's worked with several families in Greenwich." "Greenwich credentials, eh?" James raised an eyebrow. "Fancy. Did they send over her references?" "Yes, all checked out. She's British, actually. Moved here about 5 years ago. Has quite an impressive resume. Worked for some prominent families in London before coming to the States." "What time is she coming?" 9:30. "Just in time for you to meet her before your shift." James nodded, glancing at his watch. "Perfect. I should be able to stay for about 15 minutes before heading to the hospital. Surgery's not until 11. The doorbell rang precisely at 9:30. Sarah appreciated punctuality, and this made a good first impression. Through the security camera feed on her phone, she could see a woman in her mid-30s, dressed professionally in a navy blazer and knee-length skirt, her brown hair pulled back in a neat bun. When they opened the door, Lisa Bennett looked even more impressive in person. Her posture was perfect, her smile warm but professional, and she carried herself with the kind of quiet confidence that came from years of experience. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson? I'm Lisa Bennett." Her British accent was refined but not overly posh. "It's lovely to meet you both." As they led her into the house, Sarah noticed how Lisa's eyes took in every detail of their home. Not in a way that seemed suspicious, but rather with the attentiveness of someone who paid attention to their environment. It was a quality Sarah appreciated, especially in someone who would be caring for their daughter. "This is Emma," Sarah introduced their daughter, who was still working on her breakfast, more of it on her bib than in her mouth. "Hello, beautiful girl," Lisa cooed, and Emma responded with a happy gurgle. "Oh, she's absolutely precious." Such alert eyes. You can tell she's taking everything in. From his perch, Jasper had been unusually quiet, observing the newcomer with his characteristic head-tilting curiosity. Normally, he would greet visitors with his standard, hello, but today he remained silent. And that's Jasper, James indicated the parrot. He's usually quite the chatterbox. Must be feeling shy today. Lisa glanced at the bird, her smile flickering just slightly. Oh yes, African greys are fascinating creatures. Such intelligent birds. I worked for a family in London who had one. She turned her attention back to Emma. Though I must admit, I prefer my charges to be of the human variety. They spent the next few minutes going over Emma's schedule, dietary requirements, and their emergency contacts. Lisa took meticulous notes in a small leather-bound notebook, asking all the right questions about Emma's routine and preferences. I should get going, James announced, checking his watch. But everything sounds great. Sarah, you'll be home around 6? That's the plan, she nodded. Earlier if I can manage it. It's my first day back, so I'm not sure what to expect. After James left, Sarah spent another hour showing Lisa around the house, going through their expectations and watching how she interacted with Emma. The nanny seemed to know exactly how to hold Emma, how to respond to her cues, and even managed to get her down for her morning nap with surprising ease. You seem to have a natural touch with her, Sarah observed, impressed. Years of experience, Lisa smiled modestly. Every child is different, of course, but there are certain universal truths when it comes to babies. They just want to feel safe and loved. As Sarah prepared to leave for work, she felt a mixture of anxiety and relief. Lisa seemed perfect, perhaps too perfect, a small voice in her head whispered, but she pushed the thought aside. This was just normal first day back at work jitters, she told herself. Be good for Lisa, sweetheart, she kissed Emma's forehead. The baby was sleeping peacefully in her crib, one tiny fist curled near her face. Mommy will be home before you know it. As she gathered her briefcase and car keys, she heard Jasper make his first sound since Lisa's arrival. A low, unfamiliar growl that she'd never heard from him before. She turned to look at him, but he had his back turned, preening his feathers as if nothing had happened. The first few weeks with Lisa seemed to go smoothly. Emma was always clean, well-fed, and happy when Sarah returned home. The house was kept in perfect order, and Lisa's daily reports were detailed and professional. Yet something felt off. It started with small things. Jasper, usually the most social creature in their household, had become increasingly withdrawn when Lisa was present. He would retreat to the furthest corner of his cage, his normally bright eyes turning dull and distant. At first, Sarah attributed it to the change in routine. Animals could be sensitive to new people, after all. But then she began noticing other things. Sometimes, when she came home early and Lisa didn't hear her enter, she would catch snippets of harsh whispers that didn't match the nanny's usual gentle demeanor. The words were never clear enough to make out, but the tone made the hair on the back of Sarah's neck stand up. One evening, after Lisa had left and Emma was asleep, Sarah was cleaning up in the kitchen when Jasper suddenly spoke in a voice that wasn't his usual mimicry. It was harder, colder, with a British accent that made Sarah freeze in place. Stupid little brat, stop crying. Sarah's blood ran cold. She turned to look at the parrot, who met her gaze with an intensity that seemed almost human. What did you say, Jasper? The bird ruffled his feathers and turned away, refusing to repeat the phrase. Sarah tried to convince herself that Jasper must have picked it up from the television, but they rarely watched British programs and something about the tone. That night, she couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, her mind racing with possibilities she didn't want to consider. James was working a night shift at the hospital, so she couldn't even discuss her concerns with him. Around 3 in the morning, she got up and went to check on Emma. The baby was sleeping peacefully, her little chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm. Sarah stood there watching her daughter, trying to shake off her unease. Was she being paranoid? Lisa's references had been impeccable. The agency had done a thorough background check. Everyone commented on how lucky they were to have found such a professional nanny. But Jasper's behavior. The next day, Sarah called in sick to work and set up a small camera in Emma's nursery. She felt guilty about the deception, but her instincts were screaming that something wasn't right. She told Lisa she had meetings all day but would be checking her phone regularly. From her home office, Sarah watched the live feed on her laptop. For the first few hours, everything seemed normal. Lisa fed Emma, played with her, put her down for her nap right on schedule. But then, around 2 in the afternoon, everything changed. Emma was crying, normal for that time of day, as she often got fussy after her nap. But Lisa's reaction was anything but normal. The nanny's face transformed into a mask of fury as she roughly grabbed Emma from her crib. "I told you to shut up, you spoiled little brat," she hissed, her refined accent dropping into something harder, more guttural. "You're just like all the others, aren't you? Born with a silver spoon in your mouth, thinking the world revolves around you." Sarah's heart stopped. She watched in horror as Lisa shook Emma, not hard enough to cause immediate harm, but with enough force to make her maternal instincts scream in protest. She was already grabbing her keys, ready to race upstairs, when she saw something else on the camera. Jasper had somehow gotten out of his cage. He'd learned to work the latch years ago and flown into the nursery. With a screech that Sarah could hear even from downstairs, he dove at Lisa's head, his wings spread wide and threatening. The nanny screamed, dropping Emma back into her crib. The baby wailed louder, but she was safe in her crib now. Lisa swatted at Jasper, who continued his aerial assault, driving her away from the crib. Sarah burst into the room just as Lisa was backing toward the door, her perfectly styled hair now in disarray, small scratches visible on her face and hands where Jasper had made contact. "Get away from my daughter." Sarah's voice was thunder, all her years of courtroom authority concentrated into those 5 words. Lisa's face underwent a remarkable transformation. The mask of fury melted into wide-eyed innocence. "Mrs. Johnson, the bird attacked me. I was just trying to comfort Emma and—" "I saw everything," Sarah cut her off, moving to stand between Lisa and the crib. The camera caught it all. Every word, every action. For a moment, something dangerous flickered in Lisa's eyes. She glanced at the door, then at Sarah, calculating. But Jasper chose that moment to land on Sarah's shoulder, his feathers puffed up to make himself look larger, his beak open in a threatening display. "The police are already on their way," Sarah lied, though she had every intention of calling them the moment Lisa was out of the house. "Leave now, and I'll let them handle this through official channels. Stay, and I'll handle it myself." She let her voice drop to a dangerous whisper. "And believe me, you don't want that." Lisa fled. They could hear her heels clicking rapidly down the stairs, followed by the slam of the front door. Only then did Sarah allow herself to shake, gathering Emma into her arms and holding her close, tears streaming down her face. Jasper hopped from her shoulder to the crib railing, his feathers slowly settling back to their normal position. "Love you, baby," he said softly, one of his favorite phrases, usually reserved for quiet moments in the evening when the family was all together. Sarah called the police immediately, then James, who left the hospital mid-surgery, leaving his patient in capable hands. By the time he got home, the house was swarming with officers. They took statements, collected the camera footage, and put out an alert for Lisa Bennett. But Lisa Bennett, they soon discovered, didn't exist, at least. Not the Lisa Bennett who had presented herself to the agency. The references were elaborate fakes. The background check had been doctored, and the real Lisa Bennett had died in London 5 years earlier. The investigation uncovered a disturbing pattern. The woman calling herself Lisa Bennett was actually Margaret Wells, part of a sophisticated criminal network that targeted wealthy families through their children's caregivers. They would place nannies in homes, gather intelligence about the family's schedules, security systems, and valuables, then use that information to plan robberies. But Margaret had a darker history than even her associates knew. Police found evidence linking her to several cases of child abuse in both the UK and the US, instances where babies in her care had suffered unexplained injuries. She had always managed to stay one step ahead of investigations, moving between countries and identities before suspicions could be confirmed. The discovery of the larger criminal network led to increased security measures at the Johnson home. Police warned them that such organizations sometimes retaliated against families who exposed their operations. James installed a state-of-the-art security system, and they hired armed guards for the first few weeks. As it turned out, they needed them. 3 weeks after Margaret's exposure, 2 men tried to break into the house in the middle of the night. But once again, Jasper proved to be their guardian angel. His loud squawks, "Intruder! Intruder!" alerted both the family and the security team. The would-be burglars were caught before they made it past the back door. The media caught wind of the story, and soon Jasper became a local celebrity. The hero Parrot made headlines across the country. Animal behaviorists studied him, amazed by his ability to recognize and respond to threats. Children's books were written about him, teaching kids about the importance of speaking up when they witness wrongdoing. But to the Johnsons, Jasper was simply family. Their protector, their friend, their silent guardian who had seen what they couldn't and found a way to warn them. They moved his cage into Emma's nursery, where he would often sing her to sleep with gentle melodies he'd learned from Sarah's lullabies. As Emma grew older, she and Jasper developed a special bond. Her first clear word, after Mama and Dada, was Jazz, her attempt at his name. He would drop toys into her playpen, making her giggle, and she would share her crackers with him, even though she was supposed to be eating them herself. Sarah eventually did take that high-profile case at her firm, but she worked primarily from home for the next year. The experience had taught her that some things were more important than career advancement. She set up a home office where she could watch Emma play while she worked on her cases. Jasper would often perch on her desk, offering his opinions on her legal briefs with well-timed yes and no responses that somehow seemed more insightful than random. The criminal network was eventually dismantled, thanks in large part to evidence gathered from the Johnson case. Margaret Wells was arrested trying to cross the Canadian border and sentenced to 15 years in prison. The agency that had placed her underwent a complete overhaul of their verification procedures, with many other agencies following suit. 5 years later, on a warm summer evening, Sarah sat in their backyard watching Emma, now a vibrant 6-year-old, playing with her younger brother Michael. Jasper, his feathers showing touches of gray around his beak but his eyes still bright and alert, sat on the porch railing, supervising the children's play with his usual attention. "Careful, Emma," he called out in Sarah's voice as the little girl climbed a bit too high on the swing set. Emma immediately adjusted her position, a response born from years of trusting Jasper's warnings. James came out with a tray of lemonade, settling into the chair beside Sarah. "Hard to believe it's been 5 years," he mused, watching their children play. Sarah knew exactly what he meant. The memories of that terrible day still haunted her, though they had faded like old photographs, softened by time and the joy that had followed. She remembered the day she discovered what Margaret had really been planning, a revelation that still made her blood run cold. It had happened just days before Jasper's dramatic intervention in the nursery. Sarah had come home early, moving quietly through the house as was her habit now, listening for any signs of distress from Emma. Instead, she heard Margaret, Lisa, as they knew her then, speaking in low tones on her phone in the kitchen. "Yes, I've got it all mapped out," she was saying, her accent slipping into something harder, more working class than the refined tones she typically used. "The mother's always home by 6, father's schedule varies. Security system's basic, shouldn't be a problem. But here's the best part. They've got one of those fancy baby formula makers. Top of the line. All I have to do is add the powder when I make her evening bottle." Sarah had frozen in the hallway, her heart pounding so loud she feared it would give her away. Through the slight gap in the door, she could see Margaret holding a small vial, examining it in the afternoon light. "Just a few drops," Margaret continued. "Doctor says it'll look like Sid's. Clean, simple." Then during all the confusion with the ambulance and everything, she laughed softly. "Well, grieving parents hardly notice if a few valuable items go missing, do they? And with their security codes and routines?" Sarah had barely made it to the bathroom before being violently ill. By the time she'd composed herself enough to call the police, Margaret had finished her call and was back to playing the perfect nanny. Without proof, it would have been their word against hers. And she had those impeccable references. That's when they'd installed the cameras. But they hadn't caught her with the poison yet, and Sarah had been terrified to leave Emma alone with her. They'd arranged for James's mother to visit and help with the baby, limiting Margaret's opportunities. The day Jasper attacked her, they later learned, was the day she'd finally decided to carry out her plan. Police found the vial in her purse, a tasteless, odorless compound that would have been nearly impossible to detect in an autopsy. The thought of how close they'd come to losing Emma still made Sarah's hands shake. But those dark memories were regularly brightened by new ones. Like the day Emma had her first dance recital, and Jasper had learned to hum her entire routine, providing a private audience whenever she wanted to practice. Or the time Michael had been having nightmares, and they discovered that Jasper had learned to sing "Somewhere Over the Rainbow" perfectly, note for note, just to help soothe the boy to sleep. The Parrot's celebrity status had faded over the years, but his impact hadn't. The Johnsons had worked with child safety organizations to develop better screening processes for caregivers. Sarah had even taken on several pro bono cases representing families who'd been victimized by similar schemes. They'd turned their trauma into purpose, their fear into action. "Tell us the story again, Mommy," Emma called out, running over with Michael trailing behind her. "Tell us about how Jasper saved me when I was a baby." Sarah smiled, making room for both children on the porch swing. Jasper immediately flew over to perch on its frame, as he always did during story time. This was their ritual now. The story had become a family legend, a testament to love's vigilance and the extraordinary capacity of an ordinary parrot to rise above his nature in defense of his family. "Well," Sarah began, drawing both children close, "it all started on a fall morning much like today, when Mommy had to go back to work." As she told the story, softening the scarier parts for young ears, she watched Jasper. He'd grown older, yes, but his eyes still held that same keen intelligence, that same unwavering devotion. He would occasionally add his own sound effects at just the right moments, making the children giggle and earning an appreciative smile from James. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Sarah stood in the doorway of Emma's room, watching her daughter's peaceful slumber. Jasper was on his special perch near her bed. He'd refused to sleep in his cage ever since that day, insisting on maintaining his self-appointed guard duty. "Love you, baby," he whispered softly in the darkness, his nighttime ritual unchanged after all these years. "Love you too, Jasper," Sarah whispered back, her heart full of gratitude for this remarkable creature who had become so much more than a pet. He was their guardian angel, their hero, their friend, proof that sometimes the most extraordinary love comes in the most ordinary packages. In the years that followed, their story would inspire countless others. Children wrote school essays about Jasper. Families adopted rescue birds, understanding now that these intelligent creatures were capable of deep bonds and remarkable acts of loyalty. The Johnsons would go on to establish a foundation dedicated to both child safety and parrot rehabilitation, turning their experience into a force for positive change. But to Jasper, none of that mattered. His world was simpler, defined by the boundaries of love and protection. Every morning, he would still greet them with "Good morning, sweetheart." Every evening, he would watch over his family with unwavering dedication. And every night, as the house grew quiet and the stars emerged, he would whisper his gentle "Love you, baby," to Emma, a lullaby of devotion that had begun in those terrifying days and would continue for all the peaceful ones that followed.